Hi, and welcome to Point and Clink here on twitch.tv/ live action roleplay. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Omega, and my other host is.
Hi, I'm Tessa Thurman.
And today's topic is world mythology. So let's introduce our guest lecturers today, and let's just go around the table. I'm going to start with Tomas. Say hi, Tomas.
Hello, I'm Tomas Prower. I'm the author of La Santa Muerte, Unearthing the Magic and Mysticism of Death, specifically exposing her occult and all the darkness within it to a non-Latino audience so they understand. Involved with that, I'm also a devotee of La Santa Muerte, and though I look straight out of Dublin, I'm actually half Mexican, so I know what I'm talking about. And I have the Santa Muerte bling to prove it and everything that protects me every day. So we'll get more on her later.
All right, thank you, Tomas. Next, we will go to Carrie. Say hi, Carrie.
Hi there, I'm Kerry Kingdom. I am one of the writers on the Scion line of games from Onyx Path Publishing. It is a game based in world mythology, where you can play the child of a god from a real world pantheon, or a construct built by that god, or one of those gods reincarnated at your tabletop. And I am joined today by my handy Sapphire Martini, and I will be talking about tricksters in mythology, and specifically female tricksters, and why they're such a healthy sign in a society.
All right, cool. And next, we go to Alex. Say hi, Alex.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Nicholson. I crowdfunded the app Beyond Books, which takes stories and puts them on your phone or tablet with accompanying music and narration and beautiful art. And we draw heavily on mythology and fairy tales for the types of stories that we like to adapt.
All right.
And I will be presenting Greek mythology's top 5 fuckboys.
All right. I'm gonna go back to Tessa. Tessa, I think you should do a proper introduction. I know you just said hi, but let people know about you if they haven't gotten to know our wonderful Tessa already.
Hi, my name's Tessa. I am an avid LARPer, though we're put on hold right now. I'm in the production of helping make a couple of LARPs with Quest Adventure Gaming, and they recently sold out, for example, Outbound Hope, a LARP in which I play a chief of science. I also, make escape rooms with Hourglass Escapes that try and integrate logic-based reasoning with gamifying the world. So, nice to meet you all.
And I'm Ryan Omega, he, him, and I am the person behind a lot of the content on this channel called Life Action Roleplay. I am also the host and producer of Iron Game Designer on Indiecade on Mondays. And the topic that I'm presenting is how early dick pics formed the ancient Philippine language, which definitely caught a lot of people's attention and people squirmed because that suddenly made them uncomfortable. And then I reflected, why did it make you uncomfortable? And that's because Western civilization's views on bodies are very, very different from what the indigenous people of the ancient Philippines were, and we will examine that in my lecture. All right.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I get squirmy.
So, let's talk about the rules. So we are the rules for the drinking part. So as we talk about Point and Clink, it's TED Talk with drinks, but there are drinking rules that go along with this. However, in terms of drinking rules, we tell people to please just be aware of their own. Um, just have the
Limit?
cognizance and wherewithal that if you're gonna drink alcohol or anything, that you are responsible for doing so. Otherwise, you don't have to drink alcohol. You can also just hydrate. But it's all done in good fun. But it's just kind of part of the thing. Um, Tessa, can you explain what some of the drinking rules are in terms of our presentations?
Sure. Our rules are mostly time based, though there is one rule from the beginning of a presentation, a disclaimer that's not a content warning or a trigger warning. Something like, oh, I made this last minute, or oh, this is going to be so weird. That will be an additional drink, which is a shot or a healthy chug. Then we have time limits. For every, I don't know, 3 minutes, we surpass our original 3 minute theoretical limit. We're going to add on an additional healthy drink or chug. So, for example, if I were to present for 10 minutes, that'd be past 3 minutes, past 6 minutes, and past 9 minutes for a total of 3 drinks, unless I made it some disclaimer. Then it would be 4. In general, if people want help, then willing volunteers in this presentation can take some of those additional drinks for them so that you're not left with all of them if you're at the end of the night and got like 5. Those are the rules as they were.
All right. And to start off, to figure out who will go first, we traditionally roll a d20. The lower number starts first, I believe.
Yeah.
All right.
Closer to 1.
Closer to 1. So everyone, roll your d20s and tell us the result. Including me. Really? Really?
A 13. That's not very lucky.
All right. Tessa with
Lucky-
13.
Lucky 7.
7 for Carrie.
I got 17.
17 for Tomas. 4. 4 for Alex. You'll never guess what I rolled.
A 1?
I rolled a
20?
1.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I was gonna wait for a comfort level of let's have a few people go first. Like, nope, the dice determined I was gonna go first. And
You
I
always
think,
roll 1s when you don't want them.
yeah, yeah, and I think I'm partly nervous because of it's just a pride thing. So, because I just want to do really well. Okay, so I guess I will begin with my presentation of how early dick pics formed the ancient Philippine language. Oh, hold on. I need to make some adjustments here. Give me a moment.
If I giggle, it's because I laugh when I feel awkward. It's not that the content is bad or awkward inherently. I'm just bad at that.
Nope, no, that is not a worry. That's just something that we will just deal with. All right. So, how early dick pics formed the ancient Philippine language. A taste in elements in Baybayin, the ancient Philippine alphabet. So, content warning, we are about to show a drawing of a dick pic from inhabitants of the early Philippines. If you cannot handle this, you need to turn away now. So, going in 5, 4, 3, 2, and that's it. That would be the picture of a very early dick pic in the Philippines. But what this actually is the letter La. So La in the ancient Philippine script is a is a there's a is a picture of a penis representing man, and it's in the Tagalog word, Tagalog being in the Philippine language, in lalaki. So why does the so when you look at this, it's like, well, I was thinking something more erotic, but really, it really is just showing this is the particular iconography. So why does the penis look crooked? If you look at the smaller icon, which is more standard version of this icon or of this letter, um, you'll see that the squiggle below is crooked, and that's because in several older societies, the zigzag formation usually represents power or energy, and so that's what was represented in the ancient Philippines culture. On the other hand, we also have something like this, ba. Ba is specifically an icon that represents breasts or buttocks, and it's also in the Filipino word babae, which means woman. And so it's important to understand that when you've kind of put these, so when you look at that, we do kind of like laugh a little bit that this is what these things are, but they also represent some things that are like deeper in this, and that is we go into the actual script called bye bye in, and it's pronounced like bye bye and in. And very early on, when this came into resurgence, people originally called it alibata, but that's problematic. It's problematic because you are using a Western cultural determination of what this Philippine language is. So it's like alibata sounds like alphabet. However, because it was used with that moniker for so long, it is now the more popular search term than Baybayin. So I usually go by Baybayin, but other people, if you want to look this up, you will find more things under Alibata because this happened around the 1990s, and only within the past 10 years you saw more Baybayin. Um, is considered an alpha syllabary rather than an alphabet. So it's similar to Japanese. So when you look at Japanese, like the kakiku keko, they have like similar words. So they have ka, they have ki, and then they have ko. The words for that would be ka and ki actually are the same vowel, and the same thing with ko and ku are considered the same vowel. So depending on your pronunciation, would just depended on where you were in the Philippines. So there are only three vowels, and yet all of the other alpha syllabaries were just these particular joining of the consonant and the vowel. As In terms of dialects in the Philippines, there are over 175 dialects in the Philippines that use Baybayin. If you look at those ancient Philippines, like look at the ancient Philippine dialects. There are eight major ones, of which Tagalog is only one of them. People think that Tagalog is the only one, but there are really several ones, and it's actually not the biggest one. There is another language called Visayan, which is even bigger, but because Tagalog is based in Metro Manila, and that's a political power of the Philippines. That's why Tagalog ended up being um, the national language. However, historically they call it Filipino rather than Tagalog because otherwise it would piss off the rest of the Philippines. They said that only one particular um, ethnic group within the Philippines got to determine the rest of the language. So the compromise was we call it Filipino, but it's really based in Tagalog. And I only know this because my family is Visayan. Um, in terms of a language, is classified as Austronesian, or specifically the subgroup is Malayo-Polynesian. So Philippine languages have far more in common with Malaysian and Aboriginal languages, Malagasy, which is the I think the language from Madagascar, and some of the other Polynesian languages than they do have with say Chinese or Japanese, even if they're like even closer, just because of the way the languages were segmented. We're gonna go into the we're going to go into the different words in terms of to see how far deep this language is. So we're going to break down some keywords, key Tagalog words in Baybayin. One of the words is bata or bata, which means child. So if you look at the individual syllabaries, you see ba, which means woman, and then you see ta, and ta is this syllabary that usually represents power. So in this case, bata is like the power of a woman is a child back in the ancient Philippines. Ta is also important in the Philippine word tao, which means uh, a person, but it also is in the word tae, which means shit. So it's really interesting that that's where um, the ancient civilizations like focus their power. But I also want to draw people to a word um, that is has a really interesting etymology in the Philippines, which is bakla. Um, so bakla is composed of three alpha syllabaries. So ba, which means woman, and we saw la, which means man, and ka actually means union. So and so people think, oh, bakla. If you didn't know anything about it, it's like it means marriage, right? It's like no, it's the idea that the man and the woman were the same, and that translates to gay. And in so people who don't understand that term, they think, oh, that person's bakla. It's like that person's gay. But really, that word is much older than people think. It is a much older concept and is not necessarily derogatory. It's only derogatory because people inflect that tone, but it itself does not um, have that particular aspect unless people put that aspect into it, which is definitely a very westernized view of that. I also want to draw attention to the middle term ka, which means union. Uh, Ka also mean it also serves as a term of togetherness. So kapatid also means brother or sister. It's interesting to note that um, Philippines as a language does not have a he or she pronoun. All of their pronouns are third person singular. So every pronoun is a they them. So in this case, it's called siya. So they said magandang siya. That means he is beautiful or she is beautiful. There is not a he or she in the Philippine language. Um, this is also important because when you talk to older Filipino ladies, sometimes they will say, "Oh, Douglas went to the store. Um, she will be back soon," and it has nothing to do with the fact that they mix genders. It's because Xia sounds a lot like she. So that is why they will do that. And for the longest time, it's like, but don't they know the difference? And it's like, no, that's what they're looking at. The translation of the pronoun of a pronoun that doesn't exist in the Philippines has to be gendered to be translated into English. Um, this brings me to another word, which is batala. If you look at the word batala, the term batala means God. There are several different versions of gods. If you look at ancient Philippine mythology, there are lots of different gods. But over the Catholicism, it's also translated to one god because of just how Catholicism works. But if you look at the individual letters, you have ba, which means woman, ta, which means um, power, ha, which means wind or emptiness. So it's in the word hangin, which means wind, and then la, which means man. So they think all of these things, woman, man, um, power, and wind or emptiness, all form the concept of God. And you see it tattooed on that person's arm. There is a variation of uh, sorry, let me go back. It's pronounced Batala, even though it looks like Batahala, and that's because there is a tendency to drop some of the A's in some of the ways people speak. Now, why aren't Filipinos using this ancient Philippine script? And there is important history that comes along with this. Biggest one is Spanish colonization. One of the first documents written by the Spanish Church in 1590, I believe, was Ang Doctrina Christiana, and that was a translation into the Tagalog language, which detailed these are the seven sins. That was the first thing actually written in by the Spanish when writing to the native Filipinos, which, by the way, were called Indios. The actual term Filipinos only applied to the Spanish colonizers, and anyone who was outside of that group was called Indios. But people who were native decided to take that back for themselves. That's why native Filipinos do call themselves Filipinos. It's a name that they won, so they keep it. Um, the other thing is that one of the things that the Spanish first did when they entered the Philippines, when they found libraries, they burned them. And that enabled them to make those conversions to Catholicism much easier. The other thing is that Due to the Spanish-American War, one of the results is that the Philippines ended up being a colony of the United States. Spain lost. They signed a treaty. One of the things that Spain lost was the possession of the Philippines. That enabled for the U.S. to actually um, have a whole colony. It's like that's great. We now feel like a real country now because we now have possession of another country. But one of the good things that the U.S. did do was they actually created a standardized education system in it's a U.S. based education system, so school became compulsory and education had to be brought worldwide. However, in some of the schools, language was the mandatory English and not the native language. So that also enabled English to be spoken more readily, but it also allowed people with different dialects to be able to speak in a common language. So was it great? No, but was it necessary? It kind of was. So most of the Philippines don't see of this as bad. Eventually, there needed to be a way to unite all of the different groups, and it was the American school system that was built in the Philippines that did that. But also, there's this idea that the ancient Philippine script was considered unsophisticated and tribal, especially when it came to looking at that. Obviously, when you look at Spanish colonization, there's also a level of classism that comes along with it. But the reason why it has survived was because of the indigenous groups within the Philippines, because a lot of the original alpha syllabary was written on bamboo. And so they kept track of a lot of these things, and those things exist. But if you see the picture on this, that is a weapon that it was attached to. This was a prized possession. So that is how a lot of these things match survived. Did not survive through the educational classroom. It was survived by oral tradition as well as different ethnic groups that were untouched for a long time. However, this is making a comeback. A lot of the resurgence of Baibayan is actually done by modern artists, specifically tattoo artists. The script itself is so beautiful that people actually want this tattooed on their skin. And so it's become a point of pride for the Philippines, and whether you're either within the Philippines or from outside the Philippines wanting to reclaim your cultural background to have this tattooed on your body. Um, Also, other arts as well. So I'm showing just different ways the art can be interpreted. So these are like elaborate cursive versions of the Babayan language. The piece on the left is Lahing Kayumangi. Um, and that literally is a beautiful script that means, in short, brown people. That's what it means. Lahing means race or the people, and Kayumangi is literally the skin of coconuts. That's literally what it is, but in idiom for the skin of a Filipino. So Lahing Kayumangi just sounds much better than brown people, but that's what Filipinos refer to themselves in terms of their skin tone. And so, if you want to learn more, the easiest place to look is Pinterest. You look up either Baybayin or Alibata. I put Alibata in parentheses because you will just literally find more. But Baybayin is the um, is the more used and more, I guess, politically correct term for what it is in order to reclaim that. In terms of other places where I have learned a lot of this information from the Filipino American National Historical Society, as well as Paul Morrow's explanation of Baybayin, which is a great place to be able to learn how this beautiful language works. And and that's it. That would be my presentation.
Yay!
Awesome. That was fascinating.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I'm glad they found it again. Was it mainly in engravings, or did people just still have it in like bamboo book form?
So so bamboo. So when you see like the Baybayin on bamboo, right? it's almost like the bamboo could still be just like sitting on the tree, but it's almost like how people put, Ed loves Mary on a tree on bark. It's written that way. It's actually written vertically. So that's how that's done. And other people will inscribe it on, their personal possessions. That's how they preserved it. It was artists that preserved it. So it's interesting that we didn't lose it because of the artists, but we had lost it because of education and colonization. So that's why it's important to support your artists. They literally saved stuff by making it cool.
So
Vibian was saved because it looked cool.
there was a question in chat that I had as well from Murphatron.
Yeah.
When you say that Bakala means gay, do you mean like the specific idea of men who are gay, or might it be used across LGBTQ people in general?
So bakla is generally gay. Um, so it can use like that. That man is bakla. That woman is bakla. So that's something that crosses genders. But there's also a very important thing in Philippine history that I want to add. In Philippine history, a lot of the ancient tribes were actually matriarchal and in nature, and the reason is this: the men were generals of armies and they went and go fight. But the women would gather all the resources and distribute them in order for the barangay or the neighborhood to survive. So as a result, the women ended up creating the governing system, and it kind of made sense because if the women were in charge of pooling and distributing resources, that actually forms a government. If a man wanted to be part of the government, he totally can, but he must act and dress as a woman to do it. That was a requirement.
That's
Interesting.
so amazing and wild, and I would have never thought of that. But that's a halfway decent way of doing the government. Just before we get too far into the questions, we will need at least 3 drinks, so that's 3 shots or healthy chugs from you for the time.
I will um I will drink all of this. I was very proud to be able to do that presentation. I was surprised I had that much to say.
I wish I had a speech here. This would be a good time for speech. Imagine motivational speech.
Go! Yay!
Yo, Filipino pride, y'all. All right.
Something that I found really interesting about the script was how beautiful and flowing it was, and it's perfect, like you said, for body art um, and art in general. And I was thinking about uh, the for want of a better word, the substrates that it was used on. And you said that bamboo was like a critical one.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about it in comparison to uh, hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian languages, and how they were, often engraved on clay or stone, and how they were quite, especially the Mesopotamian language is quite angular.
Mhm.
Um, I'm wondering if maybe bamboo was easier to work with, and that's why they could have a more flowing uh, and beautiful style.
I think part of it too is because bamboo is everywhere. And
I
so
mean,
I guess like while the Egyptians had papyrus, it's like, well, we have bamboo, and since you could just write on it and just carve on it, then it just made sense, and it's plentiful, and it's such a easy to grow resource. So having scrolls of it was not impossible, but also it's it is both strong and delicate. I mean, obviously you could lose it in a fire, and so that was unfortunate. And I always do wonder what would have happened if those libraries were not lost. And that's a thing. It's not, some people had things. It was libraries. That's a different thing that were burned for the purpose of conversion.
It's a quick way to kill a culture.
Um,
Try.
they tried. They tried.
Huh.
They didn't, but they tried.
I'm glad it was retained. That's amazing. Of the fact that a lot of other languages have been completely lost just kind of shows how resilient and probably hidden away a lot of it was.
Yeah. All right. If there's no other questions, and I already did my drinking, we can move on to the next presenter.
Do you want me to share my screen now?
Yes.
All right.
I want to see how these top 5 are ranked. Not just that they exist, but how they're ranked.
Let's see. Okay. Can everyone see?
Yep.
Yes.
It's loading right now.
Well, it says loading right now.
I might as well take this time to give a sort of general content warning. We're doing Greek mythology. If you're unfamiliar, there's a lot of heinous shit that goes on. So incest, rape, adultery, domestic abuse, child abuse, just a whole raft of stuff. I don't want people having an unpleasant time, so just heads up on that. Other than that, hello and welcome to my TED Talk, which is on Greek mythology's top 5 fuckboys. This came about because one of the things I used to do a lot of for the app was write sort of mythological roundups. And the one theme that kept coming back was, wow, Greek myth was just full of assholes, like top to bottom. And I wanted to sort of jokingly tabulate which 5 were the worst fuckboys, which is a specific subtype of asshole. And so I present my incomplete chronicle of legendary Hellenic douchebags and the women they screwed over. And this little piece here we have is commonly known as Chode on a Grecian urn. So if you're wondering what a fuckboy is, I typically answer these kinds of questions by going to dictionary.com. I was surprised to get a wonderful definition. A fuckboy is someone who does not respect women, but who heavily relies on women. Doesn't care much for other people's time, pretty self-absorbed. Does stupid things. Fucks with others' emotions. And so here we go into Achilles, the invincible hero. What do we know about Achilles? Well, very early in his heroic career, he took his squire, Patroclus, as a lover. It's not particularly fuckboy, but it's important for context. So Achilles fought in the Trojan War, but he didn't jump at the chance. He was hidden from joining the war among a group of princesses and dressed as a princess for a while. This didn't go terribly well because he ended up getting one of them pregnant. He was quite a specimen, so not super surprising. But then he was found and taken off to war, ignoring the wishes of his mother, Thetis. He also completely ditched the young lady that he impregnated. As he was preparing for war, he offered to fight the entire Greek army on behalf of Princess Iphigenia. This wasn't out of any real respect for her or the situation that she'd gotten herself into, more of that later. But mainly because Iphigenia was captured and primed to be sacrificed because she was tricked into thinking that Achilles was going to be presented to her. Achilles didn't like that he was defamed in this way and offered to fight the entire Greek army, mainly on a point of pride. So you could argue the toss on that one. Once he went to war, he was part of the attack on Lyrnessus. There was a young woman there called Briseis. I think that's how it's pronounced. She had a pretty bad day. She lost her parents, she lost her 3 brothers, and she lost her husband. But it got worse. Achilles took her as a concubine. Let's not mince words, a sex slave. So pretty bad situation. But Achilles got really unhappy when Briseis was taken from him by King Agamemnon, and so decided that he wasn't going to fight in the war anymore. Instead, just sulked around in his tent. Rather than fight in the war, he let his squire fight for him while wearing his armor so that everyone would think it was Achilles. Patroclus was a good warrior, but not as good as Achilles, and he got himself killed, unfortunately. Achilles did not take this well. He slew the man who killed Patroclus in revenge, a Trojan called Hector. And then to really drive the point home that he was unhappy with the situation, he desecrated Hector's body in front of his father. That's what you see in the art there. Achilles is riding around in his favorite chariots, just dragging Hector's dead body. He went around the city more than once, I think, just mangling up Hector's body. And I think he had to be interceded with by the gods in order to actually let Hector's dad bury him. So yeah, that's pretty inconsiderate of other people's emotions. I think you would agree under the situation.
Yeah.
So all that considered, how much of a fuckboy was Achilles? Well, I have my handy dandy fuckboy rating here, and I scientifically determined he gets a 3 hats out of 5. Next, we have Paris, Prince of Troy. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, with that hat, it has to be a 5, but let's not prejudge. So Paris was given the opportunity by several of the Greek goddesses to become a master of war or to rule the world. But instead, he decided that no, he wanted to steal Menelaus's girl, Helen. At the time, he was already married to Ione, the nymph, and had a son with her. So Paris then abducted Helen from Sparta, didn't take her kids, which is, you know, about as inconsiderate as it's possible to be, especially because it precipitated a 9-year war between Greece and Troy. And after those 9 years, had he learned his lesson? No, refused to give Helen back to Greece, refused to let her go home to her children, who she missed terribly. Despite being under siege for 9 years and a prince of Troy, he pretty much refused to fight and let his brother do all the fighting. Hector, who, as previously mentioned, did not go well for. He, in fact, never managed to kill anyone until Apollo enchanted his bow, essentially, and shot Achilles for him. But in an ironic twist, he required healing later by Ione, who straight up refused to help him on account of the adultery. So Paris essentially caused the end of his family's dynasty. His entire family, or at least all of the ones who could take over rule of Troy, were killed in the Trojan War. So all in all, he kind of messed up big. Pretty big fuckboy, which is why I've determined that he gets 4 douchey hats out of 5. Next up, we have Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, another major player in the Trojan War. He doesn't look particularly douchey in this picture I found on Google, but don't let that fool you. Odysseus was actually the one who kind of kicked off this whole situation with Helen in the first place. A lot of people were really into Helen. She was the most beautiful woman in the world. A lot of people wanted to marry her. And so in order to try and keep the peace, he suggested something called the Tyndarean Oath. Everyone who had been a suitor would have to protect her virtue and protect the marriage that she chose for herself. He didn't stick to it. And when Helen was abducted, Odysseus feigned insanity rather than have to actually follow through on his oath. Eventually, he was brought around and tricked, tricking the trickster. And he was the one who was responsible for duping Agamemnon's daughter Iphigenia into being a human sacrifice so the wind would blow. The Trojan War went on for 9 years, but Odysseus did not go immediately back to Greece. You might have heard there was a little bit of an odyssey going on. And he took the sorceress Circe as a lover for a full year and sired a son with her while he was rocking around the Mediterranean. Not the only time he cheated on his wife. He was Calypso's live-in lover for 7 years. Didn't marry her, but you know, hung around her pad, refused to work, just kind of being a waste of space. Took him 20 years to get back to his home of Ithaca, where he was supposedly king. In all that time, his wife Penelope was entirely faithful to him, even though she was being harassed by suitors who had basically moved into that palace. And Odysseus eventually met his end by being killed by the son he ran out on, his son with Circe, Telegons. So all in all, one of the bigger fuckboys of the Trojan War. He has earned a mighty 4 hats out of 5. We're going to move on to Jason, captain of the Argo. Kind of archetypal, in my opinion. Let's see what you guys think. He was picked to be captain of the Argo by the goddess Hera because of how alluring he was. And Hera predicted that this would be an important trait. It was, however, the only positive trait that he possessed because he couldn't fight, hunt, lead, or indeed sail. So the fact that he became a captain at all had to be divine intervention. He was not the only mythological figure who was dragged on this quest. He also brought in Orpheus, Heracles, Castor, and some other heroes, all to become Argonauts. On his journey, he arrived in Lemnos and stayed there briefly, and vowed fidelity to Queen, I'm going to try and say this right, Hypsipyle of Lemnos. Didn't follow through on that. Did leave her pregnant with twins. Eventually, when he neared the aim of his quest, the Golden Fleece, he enlisted the help of a princess called Medea, who was also a powerful sorceress. She fell in love with Jason, and she wanted to help him get the fleece by any means necessary. She even murdered her own brother to help him out. Definitely wouldn't have got the Golden Fleece if it was not for Medea's help. She used a lot of magic to get him through. In return, he promised that he would take her home and they would live together. He did not fall through on this again. This time he ditched her because she was not popular with his friends. Might have been because she was a little bit evil, but all the same, it was a poor diplomatic move to go on to try and marry a younger princess, Glauce. Medea didn't take kindly to this. She killed Glauci, and she actually killed the children that she'd had with Jason in that time. So Jason fucked around and then found out, which gets him a rating of 4 hats. I would love to give 4.5 hats, but I'm sure everyone knows this is a highly scientific system and we can't do half points. So we'll move on to our final fuckboy. Who could it be? It's Zeus. It's obviously Zeus. And I'll tell you why. Zeus became king of Olympus by enlisting the help of all his siblings. But when it came time to dole out leadership roles, who would be king of the sea, who would rule the underworld, he refused to give his sisters any thanks or any positions of sovereignty. So inconsiderate of women, but using women for his own purposes. What else did he do that was kind of douchey? He once tried to drown all of mankind because one dude in particular fed him people soup. You can look that up. That is a real thing that he tried to do. Well, I mean, it's myth, but it's still a real myth. His mother, Rhea, knew that her son was kind of an asshole, told him he was an abuser. He said, "How dare you? I will rape you to show that you are wrong." Which is about as far from proving your point, Zeus, as I think it is possible to be. It goes on. When he heard that a son that he was going to have with Metis the nymph would depose him in a similar vein to him deposing his own father, rather than let that happen, he just ate this nymph. I'm confused as to the logistics of that, but we should move on because I'm pretty sure I'm already over time. He wanted his sister Hera to be queen, so he tricked and raped her. And honestly, I didn't look into like the specifics of that because I was kind of disgusted by this point. But that happened. Hera held a grudge. Hera held many grudges against Zeus, but she specifically held this grudge and tried to depose him because, frankly, this is not the kind of person you want as your king. She got basically all the gods to rebel against him. And when the rebellion failed and she was captured, she was the one that was singled out to be tortured, despite the fact that she was his wife, for better or worse. It's honestly a meme at this point, as you sired so many bastard children. Probably an easier way of saying, you know, when one of his children showed up, just if something weird happened in Greece, like someone got impregnated by a swan or a cloud or something like that, it was this guy's fault. And that is why I can confidently say Zeus gets the full 5 douchey hats out of 5. Maximum fuckboy, king of Olympus. Is this your king, Olympus? No. King of the fuckboys. Thank you very much. That's my presentation.
Can you imagine how different history would have been if that was actually like the king instead of Zeus? Like if
Killmonger had been king?
Yeah, if Killmonger had been king of all of Greece, that would be an entirely different pantheon. It would have been way less weird, I think.
Killmonger also had his issues, but I think way less than Zeus. It's possible to have more issues.
Considerably less than like.
Considerably less.
Anyway.
That was a solid list.
Thank you.
That was
I,
a
I
solid.
feel a little bit out of place amongst academics such as yourselves, but this was fun to put together. So thank you for hosting, Ryan and Tess. It's a delight to present.
That was great.
Mm.
In terms of the drinking part, though, we
Oh.
did go a little high, so I hope someone will help you out, maybe. So that will be surpassing 3, surpassing 6, 9, 12, and 15. So that's 5.
Oh, I'm so
Probably
sorry.
should be 6.
Okay.
I will refill my drink and drink and take a shot.
I'll
I'll
take one
take
as
one
well.
for you, too.
Yeah.
Oh, bless you guys. This is. I made this to punish myself. This has chili powder and all sorts of weird stuff.
No. Okay, don't do that. I'll take one.
I saw a play. What is her name? The Mary Zimmerman's Argonautica about Jason and the Argonauts,
Mhm.
and it made me realize that like Jason is. If I coached the 1992 men's Olympic basketball team, the Dream Team, like I would get credit for them winning.
Mhm.
I didn't do anything. I had like Jordan on the field. I had Patrick Ewing on the field. I had Bird and Johnson and Barkley. Like Jason is just the guy who was lucky enough to be the head of the Dream Team when it was the Dream Team, even though he did nothing.
Yeah, it was kind of baffling reading up on Jason and just being like, "What are you bringing to this operation? Anything?"
It's
It looked good.
The face man, and
He
he
could have made it
sucks
big
at
in
that.
Hollywood.
like if Gilderoy
Exactly.
Lockhart led the Avengers.
I agree with Murphotron in the chat. It says Jason is the Green Hornet with 12 Katos.
Ooh,
On the
roasted.
spot.
Wow. That's so good.
Fair.
Thank you, Metatron. That's perfect.
Wow. I guess any questions for Alex before we move on?
Fingers crossed nobody asks me a difficult one.
On page 32 of book 7 of the Iliad.
Oh, we
This
got a
isn't
question
homework.
coming. I see question, and I'm like,
Okay.
we're now waiting for the question.
Get a Jeopardy music, like, stream track button.
Oh, this chili powder is doing a number on my nose.
Why
Oh.
did you put chili powder in it?
To try and remind myself not to go over. But I, you know,
Oh, were there
I
any
cannot control
runners-up?
myself.
Oh, so question from Murphotron. Most of your list came from the Iliad slash Odyssey. Are there any runners up?
Oh, let's see. Orion. Orion is kind of high on the list. He would have. He was. I was thinking about putting him in, but I would have had to have dropped Achilles, and I really hated to do that. Honestly, you can pick the Greek heroes. I think it's really crucial when you're talking about the Greek heroes to remember that hero meant something different to the Greeks. It wasn't the way that we think about heroes these days. Hero was basically just the protagonist of a story who had the will to achieve things that other people couldn't. It's kind of more of a Nietzschean archetype than what we think of as a hero these days. So yeah, they just could be this douchey and people respected them for it. Which, I think is fascinating how I'd like to think we've changed in many ways. I mean, you can look at certain famous people these days and go, have we? But you know, we're not drowning all of mankind because somebody fed you people soup. So
And question from Dr. DJ Curly. Who is your favorite Greek god or character from myth and why?
Oh man, that's a good question. I've been playing a lot of Hades lately,
Yes.
which is not really anything to do with the presentation, but Dionysus, I would say, is a problematic fave. He just seems like a really fun guy. Pretty much every depiction of him I've seen, he's just been super chill and really interesting. I think the whole demigod thing makes him a fun character. If you've not read The Wicked and the Divine, he's great in that. He's great in Hades. But yeah, that would be my pick.
All right. Awesome. All right. We are ready to go with Carrie. Are you ready, Carrie?
I am.
Okay.
Let me share.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Let's see. It says started sharing. Okay. Yep. Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, let me start with. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Then let me start tonight, what I say, with a story. Two young mothers were discussing their children and the upcoming celebrations that would honor the days of their children's births. The first mother said that she had planned a great feast for her child's celebration. She had hired expensive comedic acrobats and other performers. But not to be outdone, the second mother lied, saying that her child's celebration would be visited by the world's greatest hero. Tap, please. Sorry, one moment. This doesn't seem to want to go on ahead. There we are. A mighty warrior of whom stories were told, of battling giant monsters and lifting great mountains. But when the day came of her child's celebration, the second mother had no hope of being visited by this great hero. So she dressed herself in disguise and climbed around the outside of her own home, where she got stuck on the ledge and pigeons landed on her.
Is this a real myth?
Oh my.
My name is Carrie Kingdom, and tonight I will be discussing why female trickster heroes are the sign of a healthy society. Okay, two disclaimers. I'll be drinking for these later. One, I am not promoting the idea of a monomyth or a Campbellian idea of all stories are the same. Hermes is not Ananse. Ame no Utsume is not Odysseus. These are varied characters from varied myths. They are not all the same. They are not one mask of the same god. The characters aren't even the same as themselves. Hawaiian Maui is not Tongan Maui. Loki from the prose Eddas is not the same as Loki as he might have been transcribed by monks 100 years later. Just as much as 1960s Batman is not Christopher Nolan's Batman, right? But what we are looking at is some common ground archetypes. Second disclaimer, obviously we're looking through a very binary lens here when we're discussing male versus female tricksters. That's because we're talking about a lot of binary societies and characters as they would have been identified, but non-binary figures do exist in mythology in every archetype, including but in no way limited to tricksters. Modern understanding of gender is barely catching up with some figures like Loki or Inari. Okay, what is a trickster? It's really, really simple. A trickster is someone who wants something and lies to get it. These are two things, and you need both. So one, wants something. In mythology, this could be anything from something deep and biological, an urge, a hunger like sex, food, don't get eaten, keep the sun in the sky. Or it could be something super petty, could be greed, revenge, jealousy. It drives them to lie. But Carrie, isn't lying bad? Well, yes and no. Obviously, it's not a good thing to see in society. Nobody likes being lied to, but lies are how humans survive. The idea of a fish hook is a lie that there's a worm ready to eat. A net is a lie that a fish can swim freely. Traps are lies. Even telling a lie is a necessary milestone in human cognitive development. And in myth, it's even more important because lies can create or save the world. There's a fantastic book called Trickster Makes This World by Lewis Hyde that I highly recommend to anyone who's interested. Quote, "Sometimes the road between heaven and earth is not open. The trickster steals from the gods the good things that humans need if they are to survive in this world." So, for example, Prometheus steals fire, Raven steals water, Ame-no-Utsume tricks the sun into returning from the cave, Maui does all of the above. Even though the lie isn't necessarily good or bad, it's just to satisfy a want, it can bring about these things that are so important to humanity. Let's talk about what is and what isn't a trickster. A trickster is someone who wants something and lies to get it. So the myths we talked about, shapeshifters, identity thieves, Smeagol, Lucy, Lucille Ball, who we showed earlier, Saul Goodman, Long John Silver. What's not a trickster? Okay, just being zany or wacky or humorous doesn't make you a trickster. Chaotic doesn't make you a trickster. If you're not telling a lie, you're not a trickster. Just because you're a grinning sociopath doesn't mean you're a trickster character. And just being a bully, like say most pirates, doesn't mean you're a trickster. That includes some versions of Maui, by the way, because you have to remember, even though this is a character who exists with the same name in New Zealand as 7,000 miles away in Hawaii, there's a huge distance there. And even though they have similar stories and similar names, these are two different cultures with two different oral histories, right? Oral mythologies. So what are some other things about tricksters, right? These are liminal figures. They can move from one world to another, right? Whether a metaphysical world or a physical or a social world. Lying becomes often for them more than just disguise. It allows them to go through a metamorphosis, right? A trickster who disguises themselves as a fisherman becomes a fisherman and uses those skills. The figure of a trickster is able to enter those worlds and be part of those worlds, even though that's not where they come from. Similarly, like Alex talked about, Zeus turns into a swan, impregnates a woman, and that woman gives birth to an egg. This is more than just a disguise, this is a transformation. Loki changes into a horse, procreates with a male horse, and Loki gives birth to a baby horse. And finally, they are driven by those wants that we talked about earlier, right? Lusty, hungry, vengeful, greedy. And this makes them gullible. This gets them into some serious trouble. And this triggers a Carrie Kingdom tangent rant. You cannot trick a trickster is wrong. It is mythologically wrong. Mythological tricksters are so gullible. Anansi gets trapped in the Tarman. Loki is outsmarted by the dwarves. Coyote gets his dick stuck in a porcupine. Maui, Google him. Tricksters are so driven by their wants that they are defenseless against being tricked themselves. This is a motif you see over and over and over again. Tangent rant over. Which brings up the question, why are there so few female tricksters in world myth? Several pull a trick, like Ame-no-Utsume, tricking Amaterasu out of the cave. Medea tricking the new wife of Jason into taking the robe and being set on fire. Famulan disguising herself as a soldier. But there are very few female characters who are utterly defined as being career tricksters the way Loki, Coyote, Anansi, Odysseus are. There are side characters, but not heroes, not protagonist characters that you see doing this over and over, generally speaking. Let's go back to Lewis Hyde again, what he has to say about it. And I thought this was fascinating. All canonical tricksters operate in patriarchal mythologies, and it would seem that the patriarchy's prime actors, even at the margins, are male. However, looking to situations in which women have a substantial share of power bears fruit. One of the only developed female tricksters in Native American lore, a female coyote, can be found among two Pueblo Indian groups, the Hopi and the Tewa, both of which are matrilineal and metrolocal. So, and there are also cases such as Bobo or Tsume or Sheila Nagig who use their sexuality as for trickery and confusion and lying, suggests that there may have been a tradition of female tricksters that disappeared over the centuries during, quoting Lewis Hyde, which Zeus's worshippers and Christian fathers were shoring up their dignity. So let's try to figure out why. What helps mythological trickster heroes flourish? Well, they need to have certain societal freedoms, right? The ability to travel from one place to another, the ability to blend into numerous societal roles. If you can't disguise yourself as a humble fisherman, if you're a marginalized group that isn't allowed to fish. Similarly, you need some storytelling freedoms, right? Heroes must be permitted flaws. Those desires we talked about with tricksters. So obviously there are very few trickster heroes in, for example, Christian hagiographies. And the absence of these freedoms limits who can easily step into the role of a trickster hero. This can apply to any marginalized group. And that brings us to the crux of the point. And that is that the stories we tell define our outlook of the world. As society changes, so does mythology. As mythology changes, so does society. Toxic Star Wars fans and religious zealots are driven by the same force, violently clinging to the mythology by which they've defined their world, right? And so as we see the rise of the female trickster in modern myth, it's incredibly healthy to see. Even if what those characters are doing is wrong, the fact that they can do it means that they have freedoms that were never present in the society of Odysseus and Hermes and Prometheus. And seeing marginalized groups in these ancient roles helps to make those freedoms part of our collective mythology and thus our society. And that is why female trickster heroes are the sign of a healthy society.
Wow, that was
Thank
really
you.
cool.
Thank you.
That was really good. Yeah.
Well, recently.
Okay. How'd I do on time?
On time, exactly 10 minutes, 47 seconds, but I will deduct a minute for putting the disclaimers that took at least a minute inside the presentation. So still 9:47 plus the disclaimer credit. So long story short, that'll be 3 plus 6 plus 9 plus the disclaimer, just one of 4.
Cool. I'll take it.
Ooh, Carrie going all in on the martini with the olives.
Yeah.
James Bond style.
Any questions? I've minimized chat, so I don't know.
Let me look at chat. We've got some amazings, but not as many questions.
Who were the
Speechless.
4 figures at the last slide that you had? Like, I recognized 2 of them, but I didn't recognize the other 2.
Let me see. One is Aquafina from Ocean's 8. One is Whoopi Goldberg from Ghost.
Mm-hmm.
One is WandaVision spoilers. And one is Queen Latifah's The Equalizer, where she sort of cons her way into different situations to help people that the police won't help. New TV show on CBS that I've been watching and enjoying.
I guess I can't really think of any like mythological or religious female tricksters aside from those like Pueblo ones that you described earlier. I never really thought about that fact until now.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Hyde talks it a bit in his book, which again I highly recommend, called Trickster Makes This World, about like the absence could mean, as I talked about, an absence of freedom to be and live that trickster life, you know, in a lot of those societies. Or if you want to get into evolutionary psychology, is the trickster an expression of the male mindset of going out and doing so? I don't know.
We do have a question from Dr. DJ Curley. What was the inspiration for this presentation?
I just love mythological tricksters. I think they make for the best stories. I love like I started to go into the tangent a little bit talking about Maui, how like Maui isn't always a trickster, because there are times when Maui slows the sun through trickery, like tricking the sun into a net, or other times he just takes his fish hook and just beats the sun senseless and says, slow down. Like, and I think like I like so much of, say, Greek mythology or Irish mythology is about just like who was the strongest hero, Superman versus Goku, etc. But so much of world mythology is also like it's Bugs versus Elmer. Like it's great, and that always just like excites me. And so I've always been so interested in the idea of the trickster a as a figure.
All right. If we don't
Was,
have, oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I was trying to think of like examples of tricksters in the Bible, in like Christian sort of legend, and I could only really think of like Delilah.
I feel like there might be some. I'm not as familiar with Christian stories, but I cannot imagine. I specifically chose Christian hagiography, which is the lives of the saints, which is like medieval, like these are the virtues of how you should live to be a Christian martyr, etc. You're not going to have in those societies that are espousing those virtues stories of somebody who really wanted to get laid, so he dressed up as a strawberry bush or whatever,
Yeah, I think the only tricksters I can think of in Christian mythos would be like the original serpent in the Garden of Eden, who's like, "Hey, you want to
Yeah.
eat this fruit? It's
Yeah,
fine."
like it's villain archetypes.
Or maybe, perhaps, there might have been a lady trickster in which they were the Old Testament when they were going to kill off all of the sons, and she sent the son down the river in the basket instead of like giving it up. But I'm not sure that's trickery. That's just kind of like savingness.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lie. Wants to save the baby, tells a lie to do it. But yeah, you're right. That would be a trickster move, though not like a career character goes around like Odysseus is constantly hopping from one lie to the next, Yeah. Any other questions? I'm looking over because I have the chat over on.
Oh, Amber at Hero Forge says Esther, maybe she tricks the king of Persia into marrying her before he finds out she's Jewish. That's really good, and manages to save her people.
That's a great call. See, this is why you got to crowdsource this stuff. That's the thing about doing world mythology as opposed to Filipino or Greek mythology alike. If you're talking about all the stories of all the cultures of all the humans in the world, it's good to outsource and ask other people like, hey, does this exist somewhere?
Yeah, and there's a great point in the chat that says, in the Bible, the female tricksters are always just trying to keep their children alive. And I feel like the male tricksters, i.e. the serpent, or maybe even God, when he's like, hey, sacrifice your son. Nah, that was a joke. Are all kind of like using it for weird power reasons. Does that make sense?
we watched the movie Brigadoon a couple of years ago, my friends and I, and like the whole thing revolves around like this weird fey bargain that they made with God, and I'm like, it wasn't God you were dealing with. Like, not what of this weird bargain that your city will go away for 100 years makes you think you were dealing with the divine and not some like weird bog witch. Sorry, tangent. Carrot Kingdom tangent rant trademark stamp. Cool.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to Tessa. And your presentation.
Yeah. Could someone time this for me so I don't have to kind of fiddle with my phone while I'm doing it?
Yeah. I got you.
That'd be great.
Got it.
All right, let me try and share this. All right. Can you see the dream time?
Yes, we can.
So we can.
All right. So the dream time, a brief, and I mean brief, I'm not an expert in the dream time, introduction to Aboriginal Australian mythology, specifically of kind of creation, because that's something that I could easily go to and understand. So first of all, there are unique tribes with unique dreams. Before the devastation of European colonists, there existed hundreds, like 600 or more, and that's just what we can tell from kind of language trees of distinct clans and tribes. There were at least 250 languages with about 650 different dialects and 100 million people that were Aboriginal to Australia before, random invading British colonists and such. They lived across every climate of Australia, and unlike what a lot of people think, they had semi-permanent settlements. They all typically knew how to build a shelter. Every single tribe, from what we understand, knew how to create and maintain fire, even if they were primarily hunter-gatherer. And they also used specific tools and baked bread as early as 60,000 years ago. Since bread was thought to have been invented about that time or earlier, they were doing really well for themselves. People tend to think of Aboriginal Australians as like a primitive sort of people, but they weren't. They were just kind of dispersed and had their own traditions, unlike the European colonizers. Since there were so many tribes, there were a great many variations on Aboriginal myth, just like you would expect every different group or culture to have their own kind of version of it, but they tend to share the same qualities. They have a concept of the dreaming or the dream time, which I will go on to describe in a little bit. They have laws of reality. So instead of cultural laws, they tended to frame laws of existing in a society as terms of reality laws. There wasn't kind of a question of whether you did that because someone said so, but kind of, it was ordained that this is how we're going to do it. And they had great ancestor beings, typically large creatures that created some form of life, or they themselves became something else huge and impactful, like a mountain itself, or created the gorge in which a river ran. So great ancestral beings. They also told all of this as an oral history. So current theory holds that Aboriginal Australians migrated about 70,000 years ago from the African mainland. And so therefore they're the oldest sustained human population outside of Africa itself. So this is a huge and ancient type of society. And there's no written language amongst these peoples to carry along this huge history. 70,000 years of history was never written down or recorded in any way, except with paintings, which you'll see a lot of in this presentation, art, and most importantly, oral traditions. So history became their reality through constant retelling. It wasn't just that, oh, this happened. It's that this is happening and is continuing to happen and happened before and will happen in the future, which kind of complicates some things, but encompasses the dream time. And there's at least 50,000 years of history behind almost every group here. Continuous culture for that long without any written word had to have some very strong traditions to carry it along, and they're all oral history. So I won't be providing a heck of a lot of documents, but I will be providing a heck of a lot of paintings and traditions as spoken by the Aboriginal associations of tribes themselves. The dream time. What is it? In kind of a vague sense, it's all-encompassing of the time before, the time now, and the time in the future. It guides us through laws, and it guides us through our constant kind of existence to follow a certain path and describes what we will do with what we have done. No, that doesn't make sense. Here's some quotes that are much better about it. The dream time. The time when the ancestral spirits progressed over the land, created life and important physical geographic formations and sites. It's by Artlandish, an Aboriginal art gallery. The dreaming, or forgive me for this, Chirpua, I'm bad at that pronunciation, also means to see and understand the law as it is translated in the Aranit language. It's by Frank Gillen and Baldwin Spencer, trying to figure out how to even define this single word. And Bewur, which is the dreaming, creative beings giving the land its form and life. They make the landscape, they put the plants and animals into the land, created the first people that would belong to it, and gave the country its language. They laid down the laws and rules of people they should obey. It's the Juane Association Aboriginal Corp. You may see a large stress on laws and rules, but a lot of these laws and rules were not definitively written down anywhere, especially by colonial historians, because A, they were part to be ingrained into the society, so they kind of all understood what those were without ever having to write them down. And B, because, it's biased in terms of written language, as the Aboriginals didn't have their own written language. Today, I'm going to be mainly talking about a specific creation story regarding the rainbow serpent. There are many, many tribes that all have different variations on the creation myth of the rainbow serpent, but I'm going to be talking back to that Juane tribe that I just quoted before, and their specific creation myth of Belung, the rainbow spirit that is sort of creation and destruction, all embodied in one serpent. They also believe firmly that the serpent still resides in the second gorge of Catherine Gorge, which they call Nitimbuk. And so there are still specific ancestral laws regarding who can fish in that gorge, and that you have to catch and release a certain amount of fish to give back to the rainbow serpent there so that they don't destroy everything you know. And lastly, that pregnant women and new initiates cannot enter that portion of the river gorge because it would be dangerous to them. And they're new, so they don't know. So, Belung. In the beginning of the dream time when there was only but darkness, all was asleep. And then awoke some creatures, namely Belung, the rainbow serpent. And she awoke to traverse the land. There was not much there. So she crawled along the earth and made vast gorges. The spots where she would curl around may become mountains or valleys. And so she wanted to create territory and physical things upon the land. And then one day she retired from moving around and settled down and decided there should be animals to inhabit the land. The animals would start popping up, and one of the first animals was a frog. From the underground came hundreds of thousands of millions of frogs, and they were all having upset tummies, and the upset tummies of the frogs produced water when they belched it out, and from that water is how we filled the lakes, rivers, and watering holes that are common among the Juane people. And all water, in fact, came from these frogs that she scared out of the ground by being a stern mom. Then after the frogs came many other creatures. Eventually, she told the creatures, hey, if you don't listen to my laws and rules about how to properly live, then I will turn you into stone. If you do follow all of the laws about how to properly live, then I might turn you into a human. Humans have great stamina and can cross many lands, and therefore can explore this great world I have created for you. And so certain creatures who distinctly broke the rules got turned into mountains and stones and boulders and created even more formations upon land. And certain creatures who abided by those rules stayed and became humans who could then travel amongst these many different landmarks and visit even the second gorge of Nitimililuk and look upon the place where the serpent rests under the water themselves. It's important to know that you can actually go to the website of the Juane Association and directly try and support them through either ad revenue, learning for yourself, or visiting this area in the northern region of Australia and learn way more about their entire mythos than I can tell you right now. And that there are many other versions of this in which other great creatures create the land first, and the rainbow serpent is merely a part of them, or the rainbow serpent did something crazy different. But it's very interesting that all Aboriginal Australian mythos contain a version of the rainbow serpent and a concept of the ever existing, ever expanding Dreamtime. And that's something cool I thought you should know. So I am essentially done with this presentation.
Woo, all right.
Any questions, I guess?
Yes, we'll go to the chat for any questions. Your official time is 10 minutes and 40 seconds. So how many drinks is that?
Oh goodness, 10 minutes. Surpassing 3, surpassing 6, surpassing
9.
9. So 3?
Yeah, 3 drinks.
Okay. Woohoo! I'm just gonna drink a lot of this.
Okay.
It's a very whiskey tainted Dr. Pepper with cherry.
Oh, okay.
Would you like some help with that?
Wow.
Oh my.
That may be helpful.
Okay.
Okay.
No, Dr. DJ Curly redeemed hydrate. Does this count as a hydrate?
Yes. Yes, it is. I'll also drink.
I'm out.
She says no. I don't have water. I've got coffee. That really doesn't count.
I was about to say go get some water, but we do actually
No!
have have a
Stop
question.
redeeming hydrate.
Oh my goodness. Okay. We're all hydrating at some point. So, oh wait, question to all of my guests. Do we all have water on the side that we're drinking or no?
Yes. Yeah.
We are? Okay, good. Good. I also have water on the side. Okay, just letting you know. So, question, Tessa, how did you get interested in Aboriginal myth?
Aboriginal myth. I think as all baby ethnographers do, I took an intro to sociology and ethnography course. And always, as a beginner, the first and most interesting cultures to learn about are those who have been distinct from Western colonial civilization because they don't share that many similarities that you can automatically kind of go, oh, I know what that means. Which might just be a cool way of manifesting exoticism, which would be bad. But, you know, it's real. And long story short, the Aboriginal people of Australia have really cool myths and really interesting concepts of time. And they also tend to describe giant creatures, which actually might stem from the fact that they had like mega wombats the size of hippos and like giant actual creatures that lived on Australia for a huge amount of time that they actively went and lived with and hunted and such that we just don't have access to. So a lot of their mythos, since it is an oral history that's also myth, kind of mesh, and I always found that really interesting.
So a lot of the reasons why the creatures in Aboriginal myths are so large is because they already have large spiders, mega wombats, like already ridiculous sized animals that they're living with. That checks out,
theory,
actually.
They might have, formed that as a sense of religion. However, it's notable that there is no word for religion in the majority of these dialects, if any. They don't really have that concept. It's mainly oral history as a concept. And so it may just directly be, we had megafauna. Oh, yeah, Murphatron. Actual mega wombats, the size of hippos. We know that because there's a bunch of really cool, like, blood-laden shards of rock used as knives they found, and then, like, a big carcass of, like, a mega wombat. So we knew they ate and hunted mega wombats. Which sounds sad for the wombat, but great for everyone else.
That sounds scary.
Wombats are like the least scary giant animal Australia could produce, I feel like.
That's true. Their dingoes eat babies. That's what I've heard.
Can you imagine the sheer
Cassowaries.
fear of a giant, like a mega dingo? Or a mega emu? Like an emu the size of a
Mhm.
giraffe or something?
We didn't Australia
Cassowaries.
fight and lose 2 wars against emus, just regular sized ones? I think
I
there
mean,
had to be mega emu.
cassowaries will mess you up. Cassowaries are like emus mixed with velociraptors from Jurassic Park. Do not mess with a cassowary, you will die.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I think we are now ready for our presentation from Tomas. Tomas, are you ready?
Yes. Let me share the screen.
Okay.
There we go. Everyone can see this?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. I'm Tomas Prower. I'm the author of La Santa Muerte, Unearthing the Magic and Mysticism of Death. This is disclaimer. This is reduced from a regular 3-hour presentation that I usually give on this. So we're going to talk really quickly. And if you have any questions, we'll catch you in chat. Real fast, this is my book. And this is Santa Muerte. Santa Muerte is essentially death itself. In Spanish, Santa Muerte is literally holy death. You may think it's saint death, but even the Latin root of saint means holy. So when you're talking about Saint Christopher, Saint Joan of Arc, you're saying a translation of Holy Joan of Arc, Holy Christopher. And so this is holy death. This is what Santa Muerte is not. Santa Muerte is not sugar skull face paint. Now, we're not going to get into the whole, mishigas of cultural appropriation, because remember, it's cultural misappropriation, not cultural appropriation. And I'm not really big on gatekeeping my Latino culture from anyone else anyway. But so I have no problem with, non-Latinos wearing this makeup, doing all this stuff, as long as it's out of respect and not purposely mocking. But if you look Santa Muerte up on Google, because the cosmetic industry has latched onto her and she's become such a thing, this is what you will see. But this is not. This is Dia de Muertos. This is not Santa Muerte. This is Santa Muerte. Santa Muerte is essentially Mother Death. She is not the deity of death. She does not hold dominion over death. She is death itself. And she's feminine because in Spanish, everything has a gender, male or female, usually based on spelling. And so the word muerte is a feminine word. So whenever you refer to death itself, it's la muerte, which means everything about death gets related to femininity. So she becomes La Santa Muerte and a sort of female Grim Reaper. This is how most people usually know her. Santa Muerte as this badass frontera, bandero, doing all these bad things in cartels and helping drugs get across the borders. And is she that? Absolutely. What is she also? She's kind of nuts. She doesn't have a moral compass, which is why she's so popular. She will help a cop catch, cartels and drug smugglers and kidnappers just as much as she will help smuggle drugs, kidnap children, and do all bad things. Because of the way people talk to her in popular culture and how she's so bad, a lot of her devotees are quick to defend her, saying, no, she's only good, she's only nice, because they don't want that hatred latched onto them. In truth, though, she has no moral compass. Remember, she is death. Death doesn't care who you are, rich, poor, good, bad, you're all going to die. And your own morality, your own history, and your own goodness doesn't apply. That's why she helps everyone. It doesn't matter what side of the conflict. World War II, she supported both sides. She's like the ACLU in that, yes, she will absolutely help your freedom of speech, but she'll also help the Ku Klux Klan and their freedom of speech and everything else in between. Now, everything's based on perspective, and I like to give this photo quickly to show the perspective. What is this photo? Is it a mom and a bunch of kids dancing, jumping in the air? Or did this mother hang herself in front of all these children and they're satanically celebrating it? Who knows, right? Because everything's based on perception, and everything is based on the story that you can tell and spin based off of what you see. This is the beginning of La Santa Muerte. The woman kissing her is Enrique Romero, and she has a long story, which we're not going to get into right now. But the basicness is she brought it to popular culture in the 90s. She actually had a son who went to jail, and she was a big, Santa Muerte devotee, but in private. And she made a big promise to Santa Muerte saying, you get my kid out of jail, and I will publicly show my devotion to you. I won't keep you in secret. Kid got out of jail miraculously, even though he was obviously guilty. Boom, she had this giant statue erected in the front and in her house. And she sells quesadillas outside to make some side money. And they saw her, when they go up to buy the quesadillas, and they see this giant Grim Reaper statue in the back of her house. And everyone's like, what is that? What is that? So suddenly it becomes a place where all these Santa Muerte devotees secretly meet up because that's the woman with the big statue in her house. And her house became a shrine. And as laws and laws went on, and Santa Muerte was criminalized in Mexico, Santa Muerte became this image in Enriqueta Romero's neighborhood as resistance. This is how it is standing today. And the long history of the Santa Muerte is a long history. But long story short, the story of Mexico, one political party ruled Mexico for most of its history. It's a center-right party called the PRI. And with this party, something happened in 2000. A far-right party finally beat the right party. And suddenly everything was getting privatized, and Santa Muerte was allowed to be a religion, which, of course, the far-right Catholics did not like. So they pushed and pushed and pushed the new president, Felipe Calderon, who was now an ultra-right president, to do something about it. So all these Santa Muerte people went and they took her statues, they took her images, they took effigies of her and marched down Mexico City saying, we have a right to worship La Santa Muerte in public in peace. And seeing all these real tough people, real rough people marching through the city, holding Grim Reapers, smoking dope, doing everything, looking like trouble, scared the hell out of society. And what happened? They lost their status as a religion. Now, La Santa Muerte, why does it why does it attract all these kind of misfits and outsiders? It's because if you look in, our Mexican culture, it's very machista. It's very super Catholic, male-oriented. And if you are anything that the Christian church or a very machista society says you aren't, you can't go to God for help. Let's say you're a prostitute, need to turn tricks. You think God's going to help you with that? You think God's going to help you find a same-sex lover? You think God's going to help you, do whatever crime you want? No. But you know who will? Death. Because again, death doesn't judge at all. And here, we're going to go through a bunch of some fun photos of Santa Muerte devotees. The passion for her is strong if you look in these people's faces. But also, she's been around a long time. She has her MySpace era photos. But when you look at the thing, a lot of people ask, well, what about the children? Aren't they scared of her? It's a Grim Reaper. I'd be scared as hell if that was in my house. No, because they grew up with it. Again, it's all what you learned as a child and what you become accustomed to. So here's these kids, playing their Rubik's Cube or puzzles, and here's this giant skeleton in a wedding dress standing there, and it's not a thing. It's not a problem at all. Clicked the wrong thing there. And she's also a very down girl. She'll smoke with you. She'll do drugs with you. She'll drink with you. She'll go for a ride. She'll commit crimes with you. She'll help you do whatever you want. She's down. But she doesn't play nice. So if you are very eclectic in your spirituality, do not add her to your pantheon. Do not add her as another deity that you worship. Give her her own space, her own altar, and so on. But again, death is something not to be feared. Death is really, no one really knows what happens after death. And even the people who say they do and believe they do, a belief is not the same as knowing. But a lot of people who look to La Santa Muerte, they see it as a sense of empowerment. It has a big LGBTQ plus following. It has all the outsiders of society that you could possibly think of being part of her cult. And she's also super, super Catholic. So a lot of people who worship La Santa Muerte will say, you say, what's your religion? They're not going to say, I worship death. No, they're going to say, I'm Catholic, and sincerely mean it. And their justification of it is that, well, when Jesus died on the cross, it was 3 days before he came back. And in a lot of Middle Eastern mythology, when the prophet dies, death becomes his final teacher. And so in those 3 days, Santa Muerte devotees believe that death gave Jesus his final lessons on what it is to be mortal, because God cannot know what it is to be mortal if he does not know the lessons of death, the preeminent lesson of mortality. But also with La Santa Muerte, she really, really helps out with anything and absolutely anything you want, but she is absolutely 100% going to hold up her end of the bargain. Miracles have been performed. I can attest to miracles that can be performed. I can lead you to people who can tell you that. But if you do not live up to your end of the bargain, your life is going to hell. And a lot of people who work magic with her really have a hard time understanding that, well, with La Santa Muerte, let's say you want a relationship with your lover perfect. She is going to destroy that relationship. She's going to get rid of all your toxic friends. She's going to destroy and tear down every toxic thing that you have in your life so you can finally see the world how it is and get that true lover you want. But again, all that destruction, a lot of people like to have their rose tinted glasses on and just see the lies of life because it's more comfortable. If you're ready to see the truth, which is usually not comfortable, Santa Muerte is your girl. Again, big in the LGBT community. She has some anime out there for her. And a lot of other stuff we're going to skip over. But again, this is how they see death. She's loving. She's there for you. They also have a sense of humor. Very self-deprecative jokes are not beyond Santa Muerte at all. Magic. Let's have love. Oh, right there. All those spells that you want. You want to get that girl's panties removed? Perfect. You want work? You want Santa Muerte? It's all there for you. But again, Santa Muerte is there. Death, the Grim Reaper, escorts you to the underworld, to the afterlife. Imagine if you had to do it alone. She's there for you, and she's always by your side because you could die tomorrow. You don't know. Because, spoiler, this is you, and this is your future. Everyone's going to die. And a lot of people are scared of dealing with Santa Muerte because they're scared of dying. It's going to happen. I can give another talk on that, but it's going to happen. And it's best that you make friends with her before it happens. And again, if you want more, feel free to hit me up on social media, or here's my book that's longer than as long as I took here. The end. Let me unshare my screen. Uh-oh. Everyone's trapped and they can see my Reno background.
Oh no!
That's okay. It's
The best
fine.
city in the United States,
great.
by the way. I can get.
It's so organized compared to mine.
Hold on, let's see if I could fix it. Let's see if I
There
can
we go.
fix it. There we go. You got it. Wow.
What was the name of your book again? I'm sorry.
La Santa Muerte, Unearthing the Magic and Mysticism of Death. And it's written really for non-Latinos because, you know, you don't have to re-explain things. But I also did write the Spanish edition. So if you have some Latino friends who speak Spanish and want like the in-depth stuff, I got you covered.
Cool.
That's great. In terms of timer, it was 11 minutes and less than 30 seconds. So that'll be 3, 6, 9, and that's actually it. So 3.
Perfect. I have my Bloody Maria, which is my Bloody Mary with tequila for the theme,
Yes.
which I will take in sips.
Healthy sips.
You know, don't want to die
Alright.
too soon.
It feels like
We're
the
friends
universe
now.
has like determined the order of how this should go, because it's interesting how I feel like La Santa Muerte did incorporate almost like everything else that preceded before your lecture. It was really interesting to see the progression of talks, and something always made reference to the thing before, and it was just really cool. The dice knows, or possibly
Dice
without
knows.
being weird about it. Maybe it's La Santa Muerte was also present in knowing that this was a presentation for her.
Oh, she's always present. She's
Oh,
always
no.
present.
Oh, there's a couple of questions in chat.
They're all a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Ember at Hero Forge says, so is there a crossover between Mexican goth subculture and La Santa Muerte devotees?
Um, nothing direct. I mean, a lot of just like in U.S. goth culture, you'll see people share things about Tim Burton along with Peter Murphy and kind of the general aesthetic that goes with it. Same thing. There's a lot of other death symbology in Mexican culture, whether it's from the Aztecs, the Mexica, to Dia de Muertos, to La Catarina, to Santa Muerte. It just fits the vibe. It fits the vibe and fits the aesthetic. So there is crossover, but it's mostly aesthetic.
I've heard of La Catarina before. What is the La Catarina figure?
She's the skeleton that has that big giant hat that you see usually in like parades.
Mhm.
And she has a whole story, but it's really making fun of colonialism, showing this well-to-do colonial white woman or Spanish woman, and she's a skeleton because guess what? That bitch is going to die soon. No one's immune, not even the top rank of society. So
Huh.
it's kind of like a, you have yours now, but get ready.
Right.
F you to the aristocracy.
Cool.
Wow.
Yes. My question is, do you consider her to be a narco saint? Like, I know some people who affiliate themselves with like Jesus Malverde, who is like kind of clearly a narco saint. Like, I would like your take on that, I guess.
I don't think she really is. And again, it's not an organized religion. So if you ask 20 people, you'll get 30 different answers. But I would say she is by default just because she doesn't judge you. And she's the one Mexican esque, Catholic approved deity who can go ahead and help you with those drug deals and help you move shipment across. So she is just because a lot of the narcos really love her and a lot of the narcos really worship her. And so you do a bust, you'll see her statues there. A lot of people don't like to admit it, but it's the truth. I mean, she's not good, she's not bad, she just is. It's like fire. It's like, what are you going to do with it?
Mhm.
Another question, is there a native Mesoamerican origin of Santa Muerte, a goddess or folk hero that you can sort of point to?
There's a couple. It depends. Some people think that she's the reincarnation of it, but Tonatzin, the mother goddess, is one. And there's another one whose Nahuatl name I can't pronounce. But there's two specific female deities that a lot of people say Santa Muerte is this or is that. But and there's no written history that we can find to support when she actually started. Again, when that quesadilla vendor Enriqueta Romero started making it public in the 90s, that's when the world really started seeing it. And then when Breaking Bad had her on TV, that's when everyone found out. So it's very modern, but ancient at the same time, till question marks.
We had a there was an interesting comment from KK Got It Going On, who wrote, let me see if I could find it. Um, she's like the queen of counterculture.
Oh, oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, here in Los Angeles, you go to East LA, you go to the bad parts of Hollywood, which is almost all of Hollywood, and you do. She is everywhere. Her temples, but a lot of them are not run legally, so they're not obvious, and they move around a lot. And they are. You want to meet some like real, authentic countercultural people? Go. If you don't look Latino and you don't speak Spanish to cover that up, there will be hesitancy because there is mistrust, especially if the store is a front. So, but if you come in with respect, they'll help you out. And a lot of them are homeless shelters for trans youth in East LA. A lot of them are run by trans women. I mean, she's all those queer slides I had there. Yeah, she's mega popular among because it's nice to have someone who doesn't judge you. A lot of deities have like the personal I want this, I want that from you, or have their own agendas. She doesn't have one. She loves you just how you are.
Thomas, can we talk a little more about so you mentioned that people perform magic invoking La Santa Muerte, and they very much still identify as Catholics, you said,
Yeah.
which is very much in juxtaposition to the way that the magic and people who practice magic tend to find in the United States, where they're very much in opposition to Christianity. Like, could you? Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it has to do with kind of the fear of because a lot of you look at the Santa Muerte Society, and the vast majority of people are people who are really oppressed by society. I mean, it's the lowest of the low, and a lot of those people, they tend to be the most religious. They tend to need that higher power above. They need to know that something above them is more powerful to protect them, because they don't have that power, or at least don't feel they have that in their life. And so all you know is God, especially when you grow up Mexican. Catholicism is part of Mexican culture. You see a Mexican who's not Catholic, you'll have a big discussion on, are they really Mexican? But that's another discussion. But yeah, so it's real tough, but it's part and parcel with the culture, really. It's just, there is God, and there's no way you're going to tell them there's not a God, just as fervent as an evangelical from the South. So this has to fit the God worldview. Like that other slide I was talking about before, you're not going to talk about my worldview and change that, because I need that. I need to cling on to that. So here's the Santa Muerte. I just need to incorporate that into my worldview rather than change anything or anything that'll threaten me.
Another question: what does Santa Muerte ask in return for her help?
You got to arrange that yourself with her. It depends on whatever you want. Most people get tattoos just because that's the fashionable thing. But you can do an active service. You can help someone else and pay it forward in exchange. You can donate to something. You can give her an offering. You can give her a cut of whatever your proceeds are. It's whatever you work out when you work out with her. And then you just gotta, it's a contract you write up, so you best follow it. You have no excuse.
All right, we are at the end of today's lectures. Thank you everyone for these amazing lectures. Let's go around the table and let's find out where people can find you on social medias and plug whatever projects are coming up. I'm going to start off with my co-host Tessa.
Oh, hi, my name's Tessa. You can find me on Twitter at AssetTessa1 or Facebook maybe at AssetTessa101. Currently, my company, Hourglass Escapes, is working on releasing our video game, but also escape room called The Navigators that we worked in tandem with some people from Jet Propulsion Laboratories and NASA to make. So I'll give you more deets on that when I can, but that's our newest project. Glad to be here with you guys. Thanks so much.
All right, next we go to Tomas.
Hello, I'm Tomas Prower. You can find me all over the internet on Googling Tomas Prower or all the social media by Tomas Prower. You really want to help me out? Search me out on Barnes & Noble. Buy the books, get it wherever you can find it, but support your local bookstores first. There's a strike on Amazon right now, and get it from the publishing house, get it from the library, get it from your friends. But yeah, support. It's the best thing you can do.
All right. Carrie, where can people find you on the internets?
Oh no, Carrie,
Oh no,
you're
he's
muted.
muted.
You're on mute.
I was unmuted listening, and then I muted myself to talk. The story of 2020 and 2021. Anyway, I'm Carrie Kingdom. You can find me on Twitter at Carrie Kingdom, Cary, Kingdom like magic. If you want to check out Scion, a role-playing game about children of myth in the modern age, check out Scion 2nd Edition at theonyxpath.com or DriveThruRPG.
All right, Alex, where can people find you on the internets?
Sorry, took a while to unmute. That's a good question, Ryan. You can follow the Beyond Books app that I mentioned before at Beyond Books app on Twitter. That's pretty much it. I don't have a huge social media presence, but if you are interested in learning more about mythological figures and legends, you can download the app on the App Store. And we have several stories that have some really fantastic retellings by myself and a very diverse range of writers and artistic collaborators.
All right, thank you. I am your host, Ryan Omega, and you could find me here on Live Action Roleplay next week, next Tuesday, rather. We are going to have a game or video chat actually run by its designer, so I'm very excited about that. Patrick Watson and Nat Mesnard are going to be hosting a game of Business Wizards, and I will be playing along with our friends Avon Gonzalez and Elizabeth Nordenholt. So we are all going to be playing Business Wizards, run again by the creators. And next Thursday, um, like next week Thursday, is going to be the return of our show, Purgatory Cafe, where more antics happen between the angels, devils, and humans, and just all sorts of fun, interesting things with that LARP. So, um, everyone, we're gonna go hydrate, and let's see if I could find a group we can raid. Um, hmm, okay. We're gonna raid Saving Throw Show. Um, but before we go, I want to thank everyone who is here. Thank you for tuning in. Um, we are still trying to figure out what the next topic is, so if you have ideas, please let me know by sending a message, by whispering to me at Life Action Roleplay, where I will often respond. If you're part of the Patreon, you can also contact me directly. You could also message me on Twitter under Ryan OMGA. So any potential ideas, your idea might be the next topic um, inspiration for our next group of lectures. These lectures will happen every second Thursday of the month. All right, so let me go and raid Saving Throw Show.